Hey everyone, Michael Pickens here with the Libertarian Leadership Academy weekday live stream where we interview candidates and activists from around the country doing some amazing things to advance the cause of liberty. Today we have Ralph Groves. He's running for U.S. House District 11 in Florida. He's an expert in foreign policy, has a ton of military defense experience, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, especially with what's going on with Iran. So, Ralph, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So the first question I always ask candidates on the show is, why are you running?
The first thing is I'm running to give the people in the 11th Congressional District of Florida, which covers the communities west of Orlando, a third option. Besides the Republicans and the Democrats, there's also the Libertarian Party. So
Hmm.
I want to wave that libertarian flag and give people that option. People don't have to be pigeonholed, you might say, into a duopoly of a two-party system. There can be other parties out there, and namely the Libertarian Party, my party.
Well, reading up on your website and your background and the research papers that you've put together, you probably have more foreign policy experience than both the Republican Democrat competitors combined, I'm sure. Right? So there's got to be some more deeper reasons than just to give people a third choice. You're giving them a smarter choice, really. And can you talk about some of your experience in foreign policy?
Sure. Well, what I just mentioned about giving people a third choice besides the duopoly, yes, that's the first thing, but it's not the only thing. I
Hmm.
can go down a litany of other things, and that is mainly that because of my experience in the U.S. Army and the Department of Defense, which is now known as the Department of War, but when I was working there, it was DOD, Department of
Yeah.
Defense. I learned a lot about global matters. I was deployed in the Iraq War, and I'll just tell anybody who's watching right now, if you can avoid being in a war, so much the better. But I was deployed in the war, and as I've mentioned to many people, one of my sons right now is a special missions aviator in the U.S. Air Force right now, and so what's going on with Iran is of concern to me and to my wife. So I'd like to be able to share, especially for the people of Florida, that I wouldn't regard mobilization of the Florida National Guard, or for that matter, the sending of the U.S. Army writ large to a foreign war. I've been there, done that,
Hmm.
walk the walk, and I talk the talk. And so, as much as possible, based on my own experience, I wouldn't want Floridians, or for that matter, any Americans, to be involved in a war that may not be necessary. Now, that may be a matter of opinion if a war is necessary or not, but still, I would give that a lot of scrutiny. And also, I might say that I worked with allies when I was working as an analyst for the Department of Defense. That was after my experience on U.S. Army active duty, during which time I was stationed in the U.S. and in Germany. I worked at a Royal Air Force base in England.
Hmm.
And at that Royal Air Force Base, there were, of course, British personnel and Americans, but also NATO personnel. So I got to meet a lot of people who are allies of ours and to discern their experiences and attitudes towards international affairs and the threat that Russia poses to Europe as a whole, which they've actually exercised in Ukraine. So I would want to bring all this forward to help the people of Florida. Keep the Floridian National Guard home. Get more U.S. funding from the U.S. government, federal government, for the Coast Guard in Florida to help out with hurricane relief and interdiction of illegal drugs coming into Florida. So now that I'm retired, both from the Army and the DoD, I'm not thinking about the outside world exclusively, but rather what happens in the outside world that affects Florida, and how
Hmm.
does Florida interact with the rest of the world, and hopefully in a peaceful way. So I think that sums up a lot of my motivation. Give people a third choice, and let me bring my experience of being overseas and in the Army to the people of Florida.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a couple of your books real quick. So, you've written a book, Soviet Relations with Iran's Communist Parties from 1920 to 1979, and then another book, Iran Shiite Clerics' Opposition to the Shah in 1959 through 1979. What is your take with what is going on currently in Iran? And go as
First
far
of
back
all,
as you want.
well, yeah, you might be surprised that this is a difficult and complex matter, but maybe you
Mhm,
shouldn't be surprised. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that my first book that was about the former Soviet Union and its relations with the communist parties of Iran. I say parties plural because Iran actually had several communist parties in succession to one another.
mhm,
And one thing that came through in the book was as much as the Soviet Union, which at that time was communist itself, as much as they had ideological uh, compatibility with the Iranian communist parties, actually, throughout all that history of the Soviet Union and the communist parties of Iran, the Soviet Union always maintained its own national self-interest. So they worked with the communist parties, and again, I say parties because there were several parties in succession with each other to an extent, but they never wanted to sacrifice their own national self-interest. So they worked with the established government in Tehran whenever it suited them, which was often,
mhm,
by the way. Um, Now, in 1959, now we're coming a little bit more recent because my first book was written about the communists from 1920 until uh, uh, about 19 in the up till the 1940s and up to the revolution in 1979. Well, oh, by the way, I should remind people uh, when the Islamist government took over in Iran in 1979, you know what happened to the communists in the country? They were either exiled or killed. So people who were leftist in this country may keep that in mind. That many of their leftist co-ideologues were not treated well by the Islamists in Iran once the Islamists took power. Uh, Now, in 1959, that may sound like a long time ago,
mhm,
the clerical class in Iran started a gradual campaign against the Shah of Iran, the king of Iran. And it took them about 20 years to overthrow the monarchy in Iran. Little by little, they worked on it. And that was my second book about the history of the various ayatollahs and the clerical class, which as a whole is called the ulama. I don't want to get this conversation being too technical, but they most of them gradually opposed the Shah of Iran,
mhm,
and the reason for that was they regarded the Shah as not being nationalistic enough. They thought of him as being in the pocket of Western powers. Now that brings us to a point in the current day. Nationalism is very important. By the way, I don't know if you mentioned to anybody looking at my website, I lived and worked in Iran from 1977 to 1979. So I got to know Iranian people because
mhm,
I broke bread with them and had tea with them and everything. And I got to know them. And I'll tell you, Iranians are very nationalistic. They love their country. They're very proud of their country. That doesn't mean they always support the current government, whichever government that may be, but
mhm,
they're very nationalistic. So we right now have to bear in mind that Iranians are going to stick up for their country, and they if they perceive that anybody's going to push them around, they're gonna fight back against that. So if we think that overthrowing the recent Ayatollah, that's the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, that's going to end everything. No, it's actually going to start a power struggle within Iran. This is my opinion.
mhm.
And 6 months from now, we'll look back and some people may agree with me in that, or they may say that I was completely wrong. But predicting the future is always tricky, isn't it? But
Yes, it is.
my opinion is that many Iranians, most Iranians are nationalistic. Now, some of them will say that for the benefit of the country, in favor of the country, it's good that the Islamist leaders like the Ayatollahs be overthrown. Other people may say, well, yeah, but not if it puts us in the pocket of Western powers who are then going to subvert our sovereignty and so on. So it's a very delicate situation. And what I predict is that the IRGC, that's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, these guys are, well, to draw an analogy, however imperfect it may be, they're kind of like the Waffen SS in Germany during the Nazi times. These are ideologically pure, you might say, ideologically fervent, ideologically zealous, and they are armed. So a lot of people who are now dancing in the streets and protesting, against the regime, and or actually congratulating President Trump for overthrowing the Ayatollah. Well, there may be a lot of those people, maybe even some millions, but most of them are not armed. So what may happen, and I hope for the sake of humanity, this doesn't happen because a lot of people may get killed, but what may happen is basically a civil war where Islamist diehards are going to try to hold on to power, even if not with the current class of Ayatollahs. But maybe someone will rise from their ranks, from the IRGC ranks, to be kind of like a Napoleon figure who will take over the country and then proceed to squash the opposition. But then the opposition is going to fight back. And so we may end up with a civil war. By the way, there's a precedent for this. In 1925, the father of the late Shah of Iran, his name was Reza Khan. Khan means Lord Reza. He was a officer in the Iranian army, and he took over the country. And so this is the precedent that I look back at, that a military leader could become the next leader of Iran. The only thing I would say is that he had better be religiously very zealous so as to get the IRGC on his side, because if he's too secular, the IRGC won't support him. So let's see what happens. But you heard it from me. No one else has mentioned this on CNN or Fox News, but you heard it from me that this may augur a civil war in Iran.
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is their leadership being drone striked and killed, and then their parliament was drone striked. They held another one to elect leadership that was drone striked. It just seems that the United States government is just going to keep trying to take out their leadership, and there's going to be more people stepping into those positions of power that might not be as sane, if you will. And, we could see another Iraq and Afghanistan where there's just complete instability across their country. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, or like Libya, Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown, and then there was a civil war in the country. So,
Yeah.
this could result in an outcome that will be unpredictable, but also worse than what you may think. Although, could be wrong. Maybe the outcome will be favorable towards the USA and Israel, but that remains to be seen. It could get more complicated. But I would add to this that the Iranians have engaged in very provocative behavior over these last several decades. So they brought this upon themselves, and that's unfortunate for their country. When I say they, I mean the leadership. The average Iranian people probably weren't so keen on supporting Hezbollah. Now, let me give you an example why. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on supporting overseas, I shouldn't say overseas, I should say regional, but foreign proxies. But the country itself, Iran, is suffering a water shortage. They should have been building desalination plants on the southern coast of Iran to provide water for irrigation of the agricultural sector. It's not making people in Iran happy when the agricultural sector is lacking in water, or when people turn the tap and it's only a little trickle of water coming out. So this just goes to show priorities were out of tune with the average people in Iran. So I would, if I ever had the Ayatollah's ear some years ago, I would have said, "Listen, you got to stop supporting Hezbollah and get some more water in the pipelines in Iran." But anyway, I don't think they would have listened to me anyway. But there you have it.
Well, you brought up a really good point. In Washington State, there's now a water shortage, apparently. Snowfall was incredibly lower. Rainfall has been incredibly lower. And it's why haven't our government focused on desalinization? I live in a coastal town, Long Beach, Washington, and there's all kinds of water, but we have water boil advisories because the water that they're pumping has bacteria in it. But we have literally a bay and an ocean within, feet from us. We should be focusing on our own infrastructure versus policing the world.
Yeah, and yeah, we have our own issues in our own country. There are, you know what, I'm the godfather of a child here in Florida, a baby, and the family, they are half white, half black. So if I can use the term mulatto, which is not, maybe that's not used much anymore. People might say mixed race, but I help to
Yep.
support that baby as the godfather of that baby, and the family as a whole is struggling with the high grocery bills and so on, and so they appreciate the help that I'm giving to the baby, because that helps reduce their grocery bill a little bit. So yeah, I'm very sensitive to that because I'm involved. Also, one of my daughters and I work at a local food bank here in Florida, helping to get food distributed Florida wide. That's not just in the 11th congressional district; it's Florida wide. But anyway, but still, there's a need out there. So yeah, you're right. We should be focused. And every time we're shooting Tomahawk missiles in this or that theater of operations, each missile is like $1 million or something. If I had that $1 million to give to the baby that I'm helping to support, the family would be very happy. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So Joseph Lehman, he's running for Congress in Oregon as a libertarian. I've had him on the show before. He asks, how do you feel about AIPAC and other foreign PACs meddling in our government?
This gets back to a very, very complicated issue, and that's money and the need for congressmen and congresswomen to get donations, and obviously it impacts on their judgment. Uh,
Mhm.
if there could be campaign reform in such a way that congressmen and congresswomen wouldn't have to have their hand out all the time, it might result in more objective judgments. Now, for the sake of the people and during times of legislation. And on that note, guess what? I don't have any donors, so what little money I'm spending on this campaign is out of my own pocket. Now, luckily,
Mhm.
while I'm not a rich man, I'm not so poor. I have two good pensions from Uncle Sam, one from the Army and one from the Department of Defense. So I'm able to allocate a little bit of money besides helping the my godchild towards this
Mhm.
campaign on my own, my own brochures and business cards and so on and so forth. So I know that once I win an election, it may be harder to win re-election without some serious donors, and then you get into AIPAC and so on. Yeah. So I
Gotcha.
realize it's a problem.
All right, well, let's go through some of your other issues. We only have about 10 minutes left, and I want to give you an opportunity. I'm on your website right now. I just pulled it up on the screen. Uh, what are some other priorities that you have if elected or when elected?
Okay. Um, Yeah, well, there are several things. By the way, I put on my glasses. See, I'm I'm a little older than I look. Most people take me for being youngish looking, but I have a little bit of cataracts and I have to put on the glasses. Sorry about that. Well, I already
No
mentioned
worries.
anti-war,
Yep.
pro-U.S. defense industries. Let me tell you the reason for that. We have seriously depleted our inventory of weapons for our own military. So I'm pro-U.S. defense industries to build up or to replace a lot of hardware that we gave to Ukraine in particular. If the People's Republic of China invades Taiwan tomorrow, we have to have good supplies of munitions that help defend Taiwan. So I'm pro-U.S. defense industries. Now, pro-legal immigration. That's the next one. I just want to point out something. Hang on. This is my mother. When she got on a ship in Beirut, Lebanon in 1948 with her parents and siblings, they all came to the USA perfectly legally with the necessary passport and visas and papers and whatever was required. So I'm very much in favor of legal immigration. Our country needs legal immigrants because, frankly, for several decades now, the U.S. birth rate has been very low. And if we don't have legal immigrants to bolster the workforce in the future, there won't be sufficient numbers of taxpayers to support Social Security and Medicare and other social programs. So we need legal immigrants, not to mention also we need their skills. Many legal immigrants are skilled people. I mentioned my mother coming to the USA. She had two sisters, but she also had three brothers. All three brothers were engineers, and they contributed to the U.S. economy through their knowledge and their skills. Okay, much more can be said, but I know you
So
said
do you,
we only have a few minutes. Now,
do
pro-gun
you
ownership.
support a more of like a Ellis Island type immigration style? A lot of people complain about how hard it is and how difficult it is and long the process it is to become an immigrant, a legal immigrant here in the United States.
Well, I realize that I realize that there's a certain bureaucratic problem, but that doesn't mean that we should go the other extreme and allow our borders to be wide open for migrants to come in without proper vetting. So we
Sure.
have to,
Yeah.
right? So, oh, and by the way, speaking of vetting, I know a lot of people say, well, people should be vetted, but that can only happen in a legal system where you can reach back to people's countries of origin and get information on their criminal records, if they have criminal records or whatever. But when you open a border and you don't vet anybody, and people are coming from countries where vetting is difficult anyway, well, that just creates a mess. It also, when it's too many people all at once, it creates a problem. Like for example, in housing, a large number of people of adult age coming into the country all at once, that bolsters the demand for housing, and then the prices of houses goes up out of proportion to what should be a normal growth in real estate prices. So anyway, there if the legal immigration system can be reformed, and I'm sure it can be, then we should do that. But we shouldn't allow illegal
Mass
migration.
immigration. Yep.
Yeah, illegal
Yeah.
migration.
I agree
Okay,
with you.
then next on here. By the way, I hope you like this is from my website. You like the way I put things in boxes? Uh,
Yeah, it
so
looks good.
it's good, right? Yeah. Pro gun ownership. Yeah. Second
Oh,
Amendment is yeah, it's right next to the First Amendment because our founders knew that that for people to protect themselves against tyrannical governments, they should be armed. And we just said a few minutes ago, in the case of Iran and actually many countries, when people are unarmed, they can be basically sheep. When the Gestapo and the Waffen SS in Germany came and rounded up people, what could the people do? They were unarmed. The entire population was unarmed. And by the way, at that time, the Nazis had very strict gun control. They were very worried about people being armed, so that they didn't want people to be armed. So when people are armed, it enables, shall I say, not only for them to defend themselves, but it makes the government think twice before becoming too tyrannical. Yeah. So, but moving right along, pro equal justice, absolutely. One of my cousins is currently incarcerated, and he's trying his best with defense attorneys to get out of prison. And there's ample evidence, although I probably shouldn't put that out there in a public forum, there's ample evidence that he was wrongly accused. Let's put it that way. So I'm very sensitive to that. By the way, just overall, I like to tell people my feet are on the ground. I'm not an ideologue. I'm a very practical person. And I have a lot of real life experience, not only myself, but through family members. Like I said before, I'm very worried about a war in Iran because one of my own sons is in the U.S. Air Force, special mission aviator. So, so I care about these things. And I help with the food distribution in Florida and so on, because I know there are needy people out there. So, but getting back to equal justice, yes. Anything we can do to make the system better, and I would say that I'm in favor of looking very carefully at the disproportionate number of minority people being incarcerated. And why does that happen, and what can that disproportionality? Yeah. Now, the next one, federal government help for Florida. Well, I mentioned this already, not to be redundant, but I would love to see federal government, greater funding for the Environmental Protection Agency to make sure we have clean drinking water in Florida. Now, this is where I'm not a MAGA Republican type of guy who wants unvetted free enterprise. No, we need government regulation of some things, because we have to make sure that private enterprises don't pollute the water supply, just for example. So federal government help. Uphold beneficial programs. Yes. I receive Social Security. One of my daughters, by the way, I have 5 children, so I think I've mentioned one of my sons, one of my daughters. Well, I don't have just one of each; I have several of each. But anyway, she has a disability, and she's on Social Security disability and Medicare, even though she's in her 20s. Some people think Social Security, oh, that's an old age pension. You'll get that when you're in your 60s. Partially, that's true. But it's also there for younger people who suffer a disability. If you get run over by a truck and get disabled, Social Security will be there for you. So these beneficial programs should be upheld. And then support for human rights. Yeah, well, that kind of ties in with what I was saying before about equal justice for all. Oh, thank you. That's the first page of my website. And that's my picture with some of my certificates on the wall behind me. Okay, thank you for putting that up there. Okay, looks good, right? By the way, you know who took that picture? One of my daughters, the one who's of special needs, but she does very good photography.
So, fantastic. Yeah. So we have less than a minute left. Your website is grovesforcongress.com. So if you're watching the show right now, we've got 597. It keeps going up. Maybe we should keep going for a while. But you have quite a few people. If you like what Ralph has to say, go to his website, hit that donate button, give him $5, $10, $50, $100. Do what you can. Having someone as knowledgeable as Ralph in foreign policy and some of these other issues in Congress is going to do a whole lot for our country, not just the people in the 11th District in Florida. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off, Ralph?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I've spent more than 7 decades acquiring a broad range of experience, family experience, overseas experience, military experience, local experience. Uh, I mentioned local experience, like the local food bank that I support and work for. So I'd like to put more than 7 decades of experience to use. So uh, just because I'm retired, I don't just sit here watching Netflix. As a matter of fact, I don't watch Netflix at all, but I don't have time. I'm working on writing my next book, but the point is, uh, yeah, I'm busy. I'm helping my invalid wife. I take care of other family members. I take care of a godchild, and I just keep myself as busy as I've ever been. And so you can count on me to bring my work ethic to Congress.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Ralph, and thank you so much for running. I appreciate it.
Thank you.